Okay. It's so great to have you all here today with the Fall Hormonal Reset webinar. Such a beautiful time. Fall is my favorite time of the year here in Park City, Utah. We've already passed the prime. We're already starting to get snow. But I know in some places you're just starting to get fall, and other places maybe you don't really experience this as a true season with the leaves changing. But wherever you are, the seasonal change does make a difference in our health. And so I'm excited to share with you today how these seasonal changes can affect our bodies, affect our hormones, and what you could do naturally to really support your body. We're going to be talking about food, movement, mindset, skincare, supplements, and even we're going to touch on briefly on bioidentical hormones for those who are considering that as an option. So I have to start with a little bit of a disclaimer that this information is presented as educational purposes. It's not intended to diagnose or treat you. If you're not my patient or not my patient yet, this does not create a doctor-patient relationship. So if you want to work with me, I'll explain later how you can get information on doing that. Otherwise, if this might be information you just bring for your own personal lifestyle, as well as whatever healthcare providers that you're working with, and so that you could feel more empowered with the information. So let's start off with, I talk a lot about hormonal harmony. And I love the word harmony when it comes to hormones instead of the word balance because of it brings the image of or the sounds of musical instruments. So if we think of our hormones as musical instruments and our body as a symphony, then we can better understand of how they work together beautifully. And each instrument, so each hormone must play its part perfectly. It's as it's designed. And so with the music instruments, that is the right volume, rhythm, pitch, melody, tone. And when they all work together, they create a balanced and beautiful sounding song. And so with hormones, when each of our hormones work as they're designed, then our bodies can work in incredible in harmony. And so that's ideally what we want. And so when we look at the human body and how that works, when our hormones are balanced, we this isn't a perfect world, and I know this is most of us are not here. But this just to give paints a picture of what hormonal harmony might look like. So we wake up feeling rested before our alarm goes off, and that's thanks to a healthy rise in cortisol. Our stress hormone cortisol goes up in the morning, so helps us wake up. We don't need coffee or naps because we have energy throughout the day thanks to balanced blood sugar, and that's also in combination with insulin, which is a hormone that regulates blood sugar. We don't need acne treatments or concealers because our androgen levels are balanced. At the end of the day, we start to feel sleepy because that drop in cortisol happens at the end of the day. And when the lights go out, melatonin, the hormone melatonin rises. We fall asleep without night sweats or hot flashes thanks to progesterone and estrogen. And we are free of migraines, moodiness before our periods because estrogen and progesterone are balanced. And for those that are still menstruating, periods are Goldilocks just right. Not too heavy, not spotty, and not absent. But when we snuggle up at our partner or others and we feel connected, that boost in oxytocin, we can have great sex drive, and ability to orgasm without being obsessed about it due to balanced testosterone and plenty of vaginal lubrication thanks to adequate estrogen. Now, again, this is how our hormones are designed to work together in harmony, and that kind of paints the picture for a day. Now, our hormones do change throughout our lives, and as we get older, our hormones change a lot. We don't have when we go through menopause, we're not producing estrogen and progesterone from our ovaries anymore. Those come from our adrenal glands and our fat cells. We do continue to make some testosterone, but that really depends on the woman, but it really does start to decline. And even melatonin starts to drop off at age 50, and our cortisol levels can become more imbalanced. So all of this can start to be out of balance. Even before menopause, women might have estrogen dominance or not enough progesterone. So these are the kinds of things that get it all out of balance. But they do work in harmony together. They don't work in isolation. And so I painted a picture a bit about some of our hormones, and it's important to understand that our hormones work together. So a lot of people, when we hear about hormones, they think sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. But we also have our stress hormones, like I just talked about cortisol, which is one of our stress hormones. We also have sleep hormones like melatonin. And we also have metabolic hormones like thyroid, and we have neurotransmitters, which are also chemical messengers like serotonin, which is also both a hormone and a neurotransmitter, and dopamine and norepinephrine. We have all these neurotransmitters. They're all interconnected. They work together, and it's really important to realize that they do work together, and they don't work in isolation. So the question then is, what disrupts our hormones? And that actually is many of our everyday habits that we do on a regular basis. So medications that we take might interfere if a woman might be on birth control pills, for example, and or other medications can disrupt hormones. How you eat. So the types of food you eat, the timing on when you eat, the quantity and quality, this in your sleep impacts our hormones, timing, duration, and quality, as well as stress. Now, stress is normal. Stress is actually not a bad thing, but when it goes unmanaged is when it's a problem. And when we're not doing things to help support our body. So we'll be talking about how to improve these things. And exercise, that if we're not getting the right frequency, type, duration, intensity for what our body needs, then that can impact our hormones. Personal care products. That might surprise some people, but there are endocrine disrupting or hormone disrupting chemicals in many personal care products. This is actually what led me to create the Spa Doctor skincare line 10 years ago, which I did sell 2 years ago, but and I'm still helping consult the company, but I wanted to help provide my patients with something that was some skincare products that were natural and effective and free of hormone disrupting chemicals. Also, our home and work environment may also have endocrine disrupting chemicals. And unfortunately, aging alone can disrupt our hormones. And then we also may have genetic predispositions that put us at risk for some of these things being even us being even more sensitive to them. So what this is what I was wrote my first book, Clean Skin from Within. I got a lot of questions about hormones, which is what led me to write my second book, Natural Beauty Reset. And so what I'm sharing with you today is some of the information from my book, Natural Beauty Reset, the 7-day program to harmonize hormones and restore radiance. So you can find this on Amazon or wherever books are sold, and is a best-selling book, and it's been out for a few years now. It did come out in the fall, so it is my favorite time of the year. So I like to share some of the information from this book. But if you like this information, you want more, it's all in my book. And there's more than I can cover in our short webinar today. So I encourage you to go check it out. It also has a lot of recipes in there, in addition to recommendations on a 7-day program for food, movement, mindset, and skincare. Also, in the first part of the book, I dive deep into hormones, talking about some of the most important ones, also some of the most important neurotransmitters, how they work on our bodies, how they change, what affects them, in much more detail than I'm going to share today. And I also talk about more about the toxins, and I talk about the things that you can do with sleep and other things that can help you with making sure that these transitions that we go through with hormonal changes, that ideally you go through them as smooth as possible. So I really like to help women during times of hormonal transitions. So when we think about hormonal transitions, those are things like when our period starts, menarche, that when we have a surge of hormones, when we go through puberty, that's a big change. A lot of girls will have acne problems, teenage years, and then women might be looking at fertility. Maybe they're trying to get pregnant or they get pregnant, and then there's postpartum. So these are different hormonal transitions. And then there's perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. These are all different transitions. And then there are also times when a woman is just having symptoms and having struggles with these hormonal imbalances. And there's so many things that we can do with our lifestyle that really helps smooth things out. It just helps ease the transitions. And I feel like I'm getting a little bit of sound, so it can everybody on the call just make sure that you have that you're muted. Your microphone is muted. That would be awesome because I'm recording this. Thank you so much. So this book is really the guide for all of that, but I want to dive into some of that information today. So in the book, I go through the four different seasons because our hormones and our bodies and our environment change throughout the year. Even if where you live, there aren't four distinct seasons that you don't see it. There are changes in the daylight. So fall is the time of this transition from the warm, sunny days of summer, and the fall equinox is the day when day and night are equal length. And so after the fall equinox is when the nights become longer until we get to spring. So the days are getting shorter. We're getting less sunlight. And that sunlight exposure is what impacts us and our hormones and our bodies, and also the environment around us, the food that is available to us, for example. So in fall, we are shifting away from the bustling summer and preparing our bodies for winter because with having less of that sunshine, it creates some changes in our bodies. For example, for some women, they may experience PMS, PMDD, which is a more extreme form of PMS, or seasonal affective disorder. And that there is a correlation between less sunlight and these hormonal shifts, as well as a drop in the neurotransmitter hormone serotonin. And serotonin helps us feel more positive. So you might start to notice a change, a shift as your body goes into these darker days. And so I do want you to first be aware of what the changes might be, and then I'm going to share with you what are some things that you can do about it? And when we really get our bodies in sync with nature, which I think a lot of times we're not doing that because think about how much time we spend indoors and compared to how our bodies were designed to be out, yeah, out in nature, out in the sunlight, out when the sun is rising and the sun is setting. And most of the time we're indoors with artificial light. And then we have light. It could be, 24/7, we could have light around us. So we have this disconnect in the modern world. And of course, it's, certainly convenient to be able to turn the lights on and not have to light a candle. But there's some, issues that come with this change of this artificial nature of being exposed to light and not having the natural light. So it also can impact us. Another thing that happens with the change in the fall when we shift to cooler temperatures is that our thyroid levels can change. So our thyroid hormones help with mood, energy, weight, temperature regulation, digestion. And so if you do know that you have a thyroid disorder, hyperthyroidism, Graves, Hashimoto's, any of these, you might want to, this is a good time of year to get your thyroid levels tested. Or if you're having symptoms of like fatigue or weight changes, difficulty with temperature regulation, constipation, those sorts of things, then you might want to talk to your doctor about getting a thyroid panel. And when I say thyroid panel, this is really what I generally like to order. Most doctors will just run a TSH, but I think it's good to have also the free T3, free T4, and thyroid antibodies added to that because it gives us more information about what's happening with your thyroid. And we can catch early on suboptimal thyroid function rather than just waiting until you have full-blown thyroid disease, because then we can do things with your lifestyle, with supplements to help support your thyroid. But even when you get, if someone gets into having thyroid disease, there are still things that you can do naturally to support thyroid. So T3, the active thyroid hormone, may actually be higher in response to cold. This can be our body's response to that. So it can create these fluctuations in thyroid. So I just think it's a good thing to be aware of. So getting blood work done once a year or maybe several times a year is a great thing to do, especially if you're going through some sort of hormonal transition or you're just trying to optimize your health. So fall can be a good time to do that. Something interesting that happens in fall is that testosterone levels in women even can oftentimes be higher this time of year compared to summer. And experts think that that's partly due to the fact that we have higher vitamin D levels in the summer because we're getting that sun exposure, which boosts vitamin D, and that in turn can impact testosterone. Melatonin may also be impacted because with darker days, melatonin levels will start to increase compared to spring and summer when we have more light. And so sleep for some people might be easier. So if you currently struggle with sleep, this season could be a good time to get your sleep back on track because you have more of that darkness and less of you're not battling against the long summer nights. Um, and so the downside is though, you might start to feel a bit drowsier because the sun is setting earlier. And so that might be something that you may be aware of. As I mentioned, Vitamin D also changes with the seasons. We have less sun exposure in the fall, means vitamin D stores can drop. So vitamin D is something when the sun hits our skin, we get vitamin D in uh, production happening in the body, and it stores up in the body. And actually, vitamin D is a pro-hormone, so it's interconnected with all these other hormones that we've been talking about. Vitamin D deficiency is very, very common, impacts 50% of the global population. Nearly 1 billion people of different ages and ethnicities have vitamin D deficiency. So you can simply get your vitamin D levels tested. Ask your doctor to do a 25 hydroxy vitamin D level to see if how your levels are. Now, when you get your results back, ask where your number is because it's similar to other types of blood work. When I'm looking at it, I'm looking for a more optimal range, and that's what I want you to ask as well. So if your vitamin D is on the low end of the normal range, it may not be flagged as low, but if it's on the lower end of the normal range, then you should still go ahead and take a vitamin D3 supplement. You don't want to get too low because remember, you're getting that vitamin D in the summer and it's supposed to last you through the winter and those darker days when we don't have as much sunlight. So, when you take a vitamin D3 supplement, it really depends upon what your levels are. Generally, 2,000 IUs a day could be a great place to start. But if you're low or low normal range, then you probably want to take more than that. So, with my book, in each section of the seasonal resets, I talk about food, movement, mindset, and skincare. And the idea is that we're really trying to get our bodies back in line with nature so that our hormones can experience that harmony like we might find if we're more connected to nature. So let's talk about food first. I love fall produce. It's lots of, as you can see from the picture, lots of squash and root vegetables and pomegranates and really, lots of fabulous, long-lasting, hardier than summer produce. And so if you have a garden, which I actually do this year, but we got a frost already, so everything's pretty much dead. But it's the time of harvest, right? So you try and catch it before you hit that freeze, and you try and get all of that beautiful produce. Or going to your local farmers market, trying to do local and organic as much as possible. And hopefully you have a farmer's market where you are, or you have local farmers where you can get some of that lovely fall produce. And what's really beautiful about what happens in nature is that the foods that are growing abundantly in fall are nutrient rich and nutrients that support our immune system. So here we are going into the winter season. Kids are back in school. There's a lot more exposed. People are, back indoors more, getting more exposure to viruses and things. And what's beautiful is that nature provides nutrients in the produce of fall that supports our immune system. Nutrients like zinc, vitamin C, vitamin A, and B vitamins. And these are in leafy greens like collard greens, kale, also, bell peppers, cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, turnips, and bok choy. And so these can not only help your immune system, but also help your mood. So a lot of the same nutrients that are good for the immune system are good for the mood. And like I said, this can oftentimes be a time where serotonin levels, that neurotransmitter, starting to lower down. So getting foods that help support your mood as well. So in addition to the foods that I already mentioned, also omega-3 rich fatty acids, iron, magnesium, potassium, selenium, they also can be important not only for your immune system, but also for your mood and protecting against depression and seasonal affective disorder. Foods in that you might look for this type of year are Pacific halibut, free-range turkey, kale, lentils, green beans, chia seeds, and pecans. And eating an anti-inflammatory diet can also help protect against depression. So these foods are also anti-inflammatory, and high fiber foods help support the gut microbiome, which in turn, the gut microbiome, when that's healthy, it in turn helps mood and the immune system. All really important things for our food. Okay, so one of the things though that happens when it starts to turn cold is that people might be looking for their comfort foods. Food cravings might start to kick in, especially if serotonin is starting to decrease. So a lot of times people will crave sugar. So instead, just one of the things is being aware of that. And that, I mean, certainly don't beat yourself up if you have to, have like a little bit of comfort food every now and then. But look what you can do to enjoy some of the fall produce that maybe feel that need of something sweet, like pears and apples and figs. But you also want to avoid some of the cooling foods of summer, like watermelon. That's going to be that's not a seasonal fall food. And if your food cravings are more for those crunchy, salty kinds of things, you might want to look for things like like kale chips. I have a recipe in the book on that. And so choosing things that are more nutrient dense, again, will support your blood sugar and your gut microbiome. So in turn will help your mood. I have a full list of fall foods in my book, Natural Beauty Reset, so you can find the full list of foods there. But we think about, what is available to us right now and transitioning to these foods and things that are more warming, like using spices like ginger and cinnamon. So You'll find recipes in my book. I have breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snack, even some dessert recipes, and they're all gluten-free, dairy-free. They don't have added sugar. Some of them have some honey or maple syrup or dates, depending upon the season. So this is my pumpkin spice smoothie recipe. I believe this is also on my website, drtrevorcates.com. And then the roasted Brussels sprouts and apple salad. That this is also really delicious. Lots of those foods that we were talking about. And if you're looking for a treat, there the chocolate truffles are in there as well. So let's talk about for a moment about movement because we talked about food already, and the next thing is movement. So our needs for moving our body and exercise can change with the fall as well. And of course, the obvious is that the weather's turning cooler, so we may not, we're not going to likely have as much time to get outdoors because the days are shorter. So we might have to get more creative with going to the gym or going to classes or things that if we don't have time to get out during the daytime. But it's also, if leaves are changing where you are, it's a great time to take in those beautiful leaves and go for hikes and walks in the park or a bike ride, getting that outdoor exercise. But I do want to remind people to not overdo it, that moderation is key, and that's what the research shows. And here in Park City, Utah, we have one of the probably, if not the fittest county in the nation. Is up there. And people are constantly doing exercise here. And so some of my patients, I'm having to tell them to slow down because you can't overdo it with exercise. You can do too much. So it's about finding that right balance for you. And if you haven't been in exercise very much, then you want to kind of ease your way into it with walks and biking, maybe some swimming. Swimming might be harder this time of year, but there are indoor pools, especially if you can find those saltwater generated pools. But moderation is key. Because if you do too much exercise, then you are going to actually increase your cortisol levels to unhealthy levels, and that can create more of the imbalance. But if you're not getting enough exercise, it also exercise is really beneficial for your sleep and your mood. So we want to find that right balance. And as it turns cooler, you may just not feel as motivated. So, what are the things that you can do to help you feel motivated? One of the things that helps me is to plan things with other people, to meet up with a girlfriend for a hike. If I know it's on my calendar, I'm not going to let my girlfriend down, right? Or going to a class. I sign up for a fitness class, a Pilates class, and then I know that's on my calendar. And if I cancel, then I have to pay the fee. So, things that help keep you motivated and inspired. And then there's the mindset piece. When the fall leaf change and those leaves drop, we might also be feeling kind of heavy. And so it could be a good time to let negative thoughts and beliefs go that we no longer need. And to help keep our mood elevated, we can take in some mindset practices. I do have 7 of these mindset practices in the book for each season. And so this could be a good time to look at cleanups, what's on your to-do list. Also, a good time to start bringing the outside in. Like, what are crafty projects? Maybe things that you can do indoors to help get ready for winter and making sure that your home is a healthy, happy place. Because maybe in the summer, you've been spending more time outdoors, but as we go towards winter, we might be spending more time indoors. So then we want to make sure that our home is where we want it to be when winter comes around. Sleep is a big thing that we want to talk about when we talk about our hormones, when we talk about aging. And so I just want to um, give you some tips on sleep. And I talk about sleep in chapter 4 of Natural Beauty Reset in my book, that it's essential for hormone balance, overall well being, for our emotional, mental well being, our physical well being. And so fall is a great time to establish a bedtime ritual. And in the book, I talk about different tips for bedtime rituals and ways to really personalize it for you. But think about things that you can start doing at bedtime that can help you turn down the lights, turn off the electronics, listen to maybe some soothing music, maybe take a bath and some nice Epsom salt that provide the magnesium, or maybe some lavender essential oils and a diffuser. Sip on some chamomile tea, but not too much because then you have to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. We don't want that. We're already trying to do things to support sleep. So maybe just a few sips of that. Or if you can always take it like as a tincture or glycerate to get some of those nice soothing herbs that help us with sleep. And in addition to another thing that also really helps with sleep is not just your bedtime ritual, but what you do first thing in the morning too. So if when you get up in the morning and you get outside in that first morning sunlight and your eyes, you can get your body out into the sun, that actually also will help with that circadian rhythm where that's helping with your melatonin and your cortisol levels, getting those in the right balance that helps support sleep. So I don't want to skip skincare. I did create a whole skincare line. I did sell the company, but I still do love to talk about skincare. So daytime temperatures cooling off and some changes with maybe more wind or other changes with the weather can cause more dry, irritated skin. So looking at ways to hydrate, nourish your skin. Also, your skin, maybe you got too much sun in the summertime, so your skin might be recovering from that. You may have been sweating a lot, perspiring. Maybe it was really hot where you live, and in the summer you may notice your pore sizes are larger than usual, and so you might want to have a restorative facial. You can do home facials. I have DIY skincare recipes in Natural Beauty Reset, but you can do home facials if you can't afford to go in and get a nice facial. I just had one done at Waldorf Astoria Spa in Park City where I used to work. It was lovely and had some nice exfoliation to help with what as we age, our skin cell turnover that slows down. So we might end up with more of these dead skin cells. Our skin can start to look dull. And especially this time of year, our skin can benefit from some extra exfoliation. Now, we don't want to overdo it with gentle exfoliation. So yeah, so gentle exfoliation, hydrating your skin. I have the DIY pumpkin face mask. There's the chia honey green tea face wash. These are all in my book, Natural Beauty Reset. So that's fun if you like to kind of do your own skincare. That can be a great option. So, but one thing with skincare, I want to make sure, and that's really ties into this holistic approach, is one of the things that we're doing is we're reducing our exposure to hormone disrupting chemicals when we choose more natural skincare products. But our hormones naturally fluctuate and decline as we age, but we can optimize their production, function, and balance through addressing root causes. And when we're doing addressing root causes as a naturopathic physician, of course, that's a big focus for me is addressing the root causes. But we want to look at it holistically. So we want to look at how do we address nutritional deficiencies? Because I mentioned some of the nutrients in food that can be really beneficial for hormones support. And so, sorry, if you're joining us, I feel like I'm getting a little noise. But make sure that your microphone is muted so everybody can get a clear recording and hear what I'm saying very clearly. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So, nutritional deficiencies are something to address, metabolic issues, inflammation, gut disturbances, sleep issues, stress. and toxin exposures. These are things that we want to address. So in addition to what uh, the lifestyle things, the food, movement, mindset, skincare, we want to also address these as well. And so, as a naturopathic doctor, I do a lot of lab testing, and like other healthcare providers, will do a number of different lab tests. I like to do a combination of blood, urine, and saliva. Blood tests can be good for things like looking at vitamin D, like I mentioned, or thyroid, or looking at your blood sugar. Urine can be good for looking at hormone metabolites and how your hormonal balance is with your body metabolizing hormones. Saliva can be good at looking at cortisol, your stress hormone. And then there are conventional labs that do blood work, for example, or especially labs that do some of the urine and saliva tests or gut tests that might be, or nutritional deficiencies that could be added in. And then also, it's important to look at standard versus optimal ranges. So there's a typical normal range, which oftentimes is not necessarily based on a truly healthy individual. It's just a disease-free individual, which I know all of you are here because you want your health to be optimal, not just free of disease. Of course, we want to be free of disease too, but I like to look at optimal ranges and numbers, and I encourage you to work with that as well. And there are lots of supplements that help with hormonal balance and during transitions. And also there's hormone replacement therapy. These are very individual, and it depends upon your symptoms, your goals, and your lab results. But I'm going to share a few supplements that I think are beneficial for women in hormonal transitions. We did talk about vitamin D and how we can get that in exposure to the sun. Well, in the fall and as we go into winter, like I said, a lot of people become deficient in vitamin D. And because it is a prohormone, it does impact our sex hormones, our immune system, and so much of our health, our mood. And so making sure that we're getting adequate vitamin D is great. Melatonin can be a beneficial supplement for you, especially if you're over 50 or you're having difficulty sleeping and you feel like melatonin might be the reason. If you're not, there are a lot of reasons we could have trouble sleeping. It's not just a melatonin deficiency. Could be that your progesterone is low. It could be that your cortisol is too high at night. So melatonin isn't necessarily going to fix everybody's sleep problems, but it does also decline after we hit 50. So it could be contributing to your sleep. But melatonin doesn't just help with sleep, it's also a potent antioxidant. And it's interconnected with our sex hormones, our stress hormones. So we want our levels to be in good amounts. Black cohosh is an herb I put on here because a lot of women that come to my webinars are going through menopause, having hot flashes and night sweats. Also, vitamin E can be another good one for that time. And maca is an adaptogenic herb that also not only helps with our adrenal hormones, but can also help with sex hormones. Chasteberry is good for women who haven't hit menopause yet, but maybe are in this transitional perimenopausal stage where their progesterone levels are starting to drop. That can be starting as early as a woman's mid to late 30s, but for most women, that's in somewhere in their 40s. So it can help support progesterone, as well as evening primrose oil for women who have that balance of estrogen and progesterone is not quite there either because they're entering perimenopause or they have kind of more of an estrogen dominant thing going. So this is just a very brief list of supplements, and I haven't put any dosages on here, but you can learn more about these and many other supplements in the last chapter of my book, Natural Beauty Reset. So in that last chapter, I have questions and answers for you. So I will go through, unless if you have these symptoms, you may have low estrogen. Or if you have these symptoms, you may have high estrogen or progesterone or testosterone or DHEA and melatonin. I go through the different ones. And so then if you have low or high symptoms, then I give a list of supplements and dosages and what research is behind that. So that's all in the very last chapter of the book. It's a great resource. I encourage you. Can't put it all into a slide here, and it's very much, it depends on what stage you're going through. And without that information, I think, it's going to be best for you to kind of do some exploration yourself to find what supplements might be best for you. And then, of course, working with a well-trained healthcare provider that understands supplements. Unfortunately, conventional doctors aren't trained really in supplements, very minimally, if at all, in nutrition. So working with someone who is trained as a naturopathic physician or a functional medicine practitioner who's had that additional training, that's going to be really great. And especially if you're on medications or hormone replacement therapy, it's good to work with someone who's trained in that so that they can help you kind of pull all the pieces together. I do have, like I said, more information in my book, Natural Beauty Reset. This is, you can just get it on Amazon. But I also wanted to talk about bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. And so you may have heard of hormone replacement therapy. You may have listened to some of my other webinars where I talk about the Women's Health Initiative study, and that was done that was halted in the early 2000s. It said that hormone replacement therapy was not safe and women should not, the doctors stopped giving women hormone replacement therapy. Well, we now know, and actually all along, naturopathic physicians have been continuing to do bioidentical hormone replacement therapy because there's actually great information, and that hormone replacement therapy is very beneficial for women after once they enter perimenopause and go into menopause, post-menopause, because our hormones are play a very protective role. And as we go through menopause and our hormones and we stop making estrogen and progesterone and then to a certain extent other hormones, we're not we can be getting symptoms like difficulty with sleep, problems with our mood, and changes with cycle for cycling women, and changes with sex drive, all kinds of things that can be happening, sleep issues. But also there are the protective benefits of these hormones because we have hormone receptors over our entire bodies, including our brains. And so when we don't have these hormones anymore, we are at higher risk for um, cardiovascular disease, for osteoporosis, and then fractures. We're also at higher risk for dementia and other issues. So we definitely want to do things to support our hormones as we go through perimenopause and beyond. And I think that bioidentical hormone replacement therapy is a nice thing to do in addition to everything else we've already talked about. I think there are a lot of doctors now that are getting on board with giving hormone replacement therapy, and that's great. But I think if you're not doing the lifestyle thing, you're missing a really important part that keeps bioidentical hormone replacement therapy effective and safe. So, and then also to clarify, there's hormone replacement therapy and then there are bioidentical hormones. So bioidentical hormones are referring to the ones that are molecularly the same as our own hormones. So they come from natural substances, but they're made in a lab to be biomolecularly the same as our own. So you're going to see things like estradiol, estriol, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA. These are your actual hormones, and these are the bioidentical, are going to be made to be the same as our human hormones. The ones that are not are the ones used in the Women's Health Initiative study that said that hormone replacement therapy was not safe. Those are things like progestin, which is synthetic progesterone, progestin. You do not want that, you kind of want to stay away from that and stay more with the progesterone. And then also Premarin was used in those other studies, and that comes from horse mare urine, which is not molecularly the same as our own human estrogens. So And there's a lot more I can say about bioidentical hormones. Certainly, this is something you have to work with a healthcare provider on. So I just want to make sure that you do have some information that this can be a beneficial thing. And if a woman hasn't quite hit perimenopause yet, but maybe she is having some postpartum symptoms, or she's having difficulty getting pregnant, bioidentical hormones can be also helpful during those times. So the big question is, you're listening to all this, like, what's right for me? So what is right for you? Well, it depends on a number of things. What are you having any symptoms? If so, what are they? Are they things like sleep? As I mentioned, there are a number of reasons why sleep could be a problem. And so kind of honing in on why is your sleep not quite right? And you can start with the lifestyle things to see if setting up a bedtime routine and getting up and getting that morning light and getting in some more exercise and eating healthier. Maybe some of that will help eliminate some of your symptoms. But what's still there? Do you still have symptoms even despite doing all these things? Then you might want to also then look at supplements, bioidentical hormones if it's relevant. Also, are you looking to prevent diseases? Though you might be, because of your family history, genetically, you might be at higher risk for things like osteoporosis, dementia, cardiovascular disease. So you might want to also consider bioidentical hormones for those reasons too, as well as some of the nutritional supplements and things that can be helpful. What are your risks? What's your lifestyle? What are your life goals? And what access to a healthcare provider do you have? Because sometimes that can be a limiting factor on what you can actually get. Bringing it all together, you've got the knowledge that you've learned today. We've got sleep and stress. You've got food and nutrition. We've got reducing toxins, improving detoxification. You don't want to forget your gut support, all of those foods that we talked about, supplements that address the root cause, bioidentical hormones. And then, of course, there's the community and support aspect that really also helps with hormonal balance too. So, if you are looking for a healthcare provider that can help bring all this kind of stuff together, I am taking new patients currently. If you could take out your phone and scan that QR code, that will take you to my calendar, or just take a screenshot of it now. It just occurred to me I may not have updated my calendar, so hopefully I did, and there's some times on there for you. But if you go to my website, you can get access to my calendar there, but you have to pay a $25 fee. And this QR code actually allows you to have a free 15-minute call with me. And this is only if you're interested in seeing me as a patient and you want to get more information about what's involved with that, what my approach is, and the fees and all of that. So you can also email, call us, and but I would encourage you to just schedule that discovery call. We could talk for 15 minutes, and I can tell you if I think we'll be a good fit to work together. So I am going to go ahead and stop and see if we have any questions. Before I end the recording, I did get a few questions in advance, and I tried to answer all of those within the webinar the best I could about things about like when is bioidentical hormones a good option, or what are some supplements, and what are some foods, some of those types of questions I know some of you sent me. Also, I got a question, are you recording this? You can have a replay. Yes, I'll send this recording out. And so if you miss the beginning and kind of joined in later, then you'll be able to get that. Well, thanks for joining me today, everyone. And I am going to end the recording.